instructions and watched me set it up and plug the battery in and hit the start button. And then she walked away, and I said, well, just a second, aren't you going to cut the grass? And she said, I wondered exactly why you were telling me all this.
Wise woman.
See,
I learned a long time ago that men should always have the last word in a discussion with their wives, as long as it's yes, dear.
Well, now on that, years ago, my wife, we lived on a farm, and we had about an acre of grass, and it took me 3 days to mow it after work. I'd come in and mow one section, then mow the second one. So she wasn't working at the time. She says, honey, how do you start the lawnmower? I showed her, and for the next 20 years, she mowed the lawn.
Ah, I see.
Yeah.
You could have just got sheeps and goats and put them out there, Rod.
Yeah, well, and then, but then after I retired, she says, it's your turn again.
So that we can kind of keep on schedule. I'm
I
showing
was just about
2:03.
to do
Mark.
that. We're about to start. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is going to be our second last session before the holidays. We will have just an open practice session next week. As usual, Mark is going to be doing all the recording. Thank you, Mark. Just wave a hand so we know you're up there. Today we are absolutely honored to have a person that gets very embarrassed when I call him this all the time, but he is what I consider one of the true legends in calling. Kip has been calling, quite frankly, longer than many of us in this room here have even been on the planet. You could almost say he's been calling almost as long as the planet's been here, but I'm not going to go down that road. He's not only a local, national, and internationally renowned caller, he's one of those world level callers, and he's described that way in a lot of people that I personally do put in the category of legend. He's a prolific recording artist on at least 6 labels that I know of, and I believe you started and produced Eureka on your own, if I'm correct on that, Kip.
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He served on the Caller Lab Board of Governors for years. He was vice chairman of Caller Lab. I started calling in the 80s, and his was one of the first names I heard in the 1980s, and it's always been associated with caller training, caller development. I'm not sure if he has number 001 or if Bill Davis has number 001, but I believe it's either you or Bill that was the very first Caller Lab accredited caller coach. Is that correct?
Yes, we were the first ones to actually sit down, take the written exam, and later take the orals. And we both did them together simultaneously. So we're both 001-1.
Yeah. Kip is also the author of a lot of technical documents, features, a feature lecturer. He's written a lot of caller training manuals, caller training schools, the documents. He's written at least 2 books that I know of. One is Nuts and Bolts, which is on the technical aspect of calling. And the other one is a book which I would highly and strongly recommend. And Kip will put his email address here at the end. There's a book out for newer callers called Call Me Crazy, which is an excellent read and also an excellent insight into calling for the new caller level. Kip now lives in California. You're still calling and teaching regularly, or mentoring, including starting, and you're doing what I think, although a couple others have claimed it, I think was and still is the first online caller school, which I noticed you've got some of your alumni here in session today. So everybody, please put your hands together. Welcome Kip Garvey.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you for that august presentation and introduction. Yeah, sometimes I feel like I've been around since the Dead Sea was just sick, but literally been here for a while. Hey, I want to talk to you all before we start here, before I do any sharing. I really want to target this entire discussion for the next hour or so on newer callers. Every time I've seen these Zoom presentations, my heart goes out to the newer caller. It's difficult in 1 hour to try to present any kind of a topic without all of a sudden getting down into the depth, and we sort of leave the newer callers behind. So I'd like to have a little agreement with all the newer callers out there. If I get ahead of you in any way, shape, or form during this presentation, would you flag me somehow? There's a reactions button down there. You can use that, or you can use a chat to Mel, and Mel will tell me to back up. And because we don't want to leave you behind. What I'm going to present to you today, unfortunately, we have to use terms that are a little bit technical. And if you don't understand the terms completely, it's easy to get lost. I don't want that to happen, because the information you're going to receive today is something that you're going to be able to use. You're going to use it the minute this session is over. You're going to be able to go to examinations and have something that you can do and study. And I want to show you this every step along the way, because it's so important for the newer callers to be able to study this, all the skills that are necessary. You do not have to have dancers in front of you to study this. It can easily be studied without the dancers. As a matter of fact, sometimes the dancers get in the way, believe it or not. Because of all the interaction that we have with our dancers, you lose the fact that you're actually in a learning process while you're calling for live dancers. So I'm going to show you some techniques that you can use in the privacy of your own home. And then if you do happen to have a close friend or two or three couples that you can invite over to the house, I'll show you some techniques you can use with just two couples that will really, really help broaden your understanding of relationships and so on. Let's see if I can get this sharing going here. We'll jump into this slide, and so I can delve into some shameless self-promotion.
Works fine. Go ahead.
All right, we'll give it a shot here. So I've got a little bit of experience. I've been around a while. I've been behind a microphone for 60 years. And I've taught newer dancers almost every one of those years. I've had a beginner class. And I've taught all the way through C1. I've had some of the most successful caller run programs back east and out on the West Coast when I moved out here under the banner of Partners in Progress. And I've also been club caller simultaneously for dancer run clubs at the same times. And that's where, of course, I have my experience year on year for teaching newer dancers. I do have 2 books available. Call Me Crazy is for the newer callers, and it has a lot of information. It's a broad stroke of all the skill sets required for calling. Nuts and Bolts is really a deep dive into the technical structure, and it's designed for callers with 2, 3, or more years of experience. I have an online caller school. I decided that there's a lot callers can learn online, and online offers some, well, it has some features that brick and mortar caller schools simply can't offer. Brick and mortar schools are great. I do them. But they're condensed into 2, 3, 4 days. And most of the time we have to present so much information in a 4-day period of time that most of the callers feel like they're drinking through a fire hose. And unfortunately, they walk off with only 1 or 2 good ideas. So if you want any more information on that, there's my contact information, kip@kipgarvey.com. You can reach me there. And that's my email address. kipgarvey.com is the website. You can pick up information on the call school. Okay, so, all right, moving right along. Here we go. Zeros, my kingdom for a zero. Wouldn't it be great if we could just call 1 0 after another and successfully resolve the square and not have all of this agonizing partner pairings and everything else, sequence tracking and everything else that you hear about going on? Well, the fact of the matter is that we can, and we can come really, really close to virtually calling from 1 0 to another. And and it's all based on the understanding of a term, common dancers, which might be a term that's new for you. Common dancers, quite frankly, is the expression that we use whenever we have all same dancers paired up together. So when you start in a squared up set, for instance, every man has his original partner beside him. Every woman, every gal, every right-hand dancer has her original left-hand dancer, her original partner beside her. So what's common between these is that they're common to each other as partners. And anytime that you pair up dancers with the same common lady, we say that all common dancers are paired. This is an important aspect of relationships that often gets overlooked. We always want to know when we have a situation where all dancers are paired, where common dancers are paired, because it represents half of our relationship states. At any time that the pairings are same, so this is a general expression. When we say all pairings are same, we mean that all common dancers are paired. So if all men have corners, we say that all the pairing states are same. So if my focal man, one man that I'm looking at, has his corner for a partner, and all other men have corners for a partner, we say that the pairing state is same. Any other pairing state, and there's only one other one, is mixed. And it just so happens that in a mixed pairing state, all common dancers are across from each other. And this is true across the board. So we have a two-state situation. All dancers are either paired with the same dancer or they're across from the same dancer. I'll prove this to you and I'll show you that it's true. And all we need to do is figure out who that common dancer is, and we'll know precisely the pairings at any point in time. So the principal pairing rule that all of our relationships is based on is this, that any time you have normally arranged couples, a man will either be beside the same relative lady or across from the same relative lady all the time. Doesn't make any difference if the formation is facing lines or A-chain through boxes. Anytime that you have a normally arranged situation, could be right face, two face lines, left face, two face lines. When men are all paired with the same relative lady, we have a same pairing state. And the only other situation can be that that same lady is across from that man. So the relative ladies that we're talking about are original partners, corners, opposites, and right-hand ladies. Now let me talk to the lady callers out there just for one quick second. When you pick key dancers, sometimes you like to follow a lady. And that's understandable because after all, you learn to dance as a lady. So it might be easier for you to follow mentally in your head the traffic pattern that a lady is going through, a lady dancer. You might put yourself in the place of the number one lady. And if you want to do that, you can. All of the rules, everything, all the factual information and technical information that you'll learn will apply if you decide that you want to follow the number one lady, for instance, as your key or your focal dancer. The only thing that'll change is this expression. You don't have a right-hand lady anymore. You have the left-hand man. But you'll always have a partner. You'll always have a corner. You'll always have an opposite man, but you won't have a right-hand lady, of course. You'll have a left-hand man. So everything that you're going to hear me explain today, it will apply equally whether or not you choose to have a man as your focal or key dancer, or you choose to have a lady as your key dancer. So what does this principal pairing rule actually mean? It means that any time the couples are normally arranged, the relative pairing state is either same, meaning that all men have the same relative lady, or it's mixed. And that means that the same relative lady is across from the man all the time. Now, this table illustrates for us the two. If you take a look at the left-hand side of the table, you'll see that the state is same or mixed. So when we talk about relationships, it's a two-state situation. It's either same or it's mixed. There are four conditions that satisfy the same paired state. Common dancers can be paired in one of four ways. all with original partners, all with original opposites, all with original corners, or all with original right-hand ladies. That's pretty straightforward, okay? I hope nobody has an issue with that, because that really is pretty straightforward. When it comes to the mixed pairing states, it gets a little bit more complex. We actually have 4 conditions that will describe a mixed pairing state, but we have 2 of them, 2 general statements that apply to 2 of the specific conditions. When we say we have one couple paired with partner and the other paired with opposite lady, we have a one couple paired and a one couple unpaired situation. Now that could be the head boys paired with partners, side with opposite lady, or it could be the head boys with the original opposite lady and the side man with the partner. So these 2 conditions can be self-contained in the general statement when we say we have one couple paired and one couple unpaired. That table is there for you for a reference. We're not going to spend a lot of time talking about this table, believe me. And we're going to get to terminations here in just 1 second. I think there's something else that I want to spot. I would like you to, I saw a spot and I said it. I want to express to you one more thing, that there are 2 methods that we use in tracking these relationships. The most popular one is the visual method that callers use. And there are 3 cases here. And the other one is a kind of a new theory called groups. And that's almost another whole study. Groups is another whole study, but they're both closely related. We're going to concentrate on the 3 visual cases today. With that in mind, I'm going to jump over to hopefully my terminations. And if you are not familiar with terminations, this is something that you absolutely have to get access to. It's a browser-based checker system is what it is. And it's really very, very powerful. Of course, it does have some limitations. It's not the most powerful checker system, but for learning and training as a newer caller, this is extraordinarily self-contained. You would go there. I think I covered up my my URL, but it's www.tamtwirlers.org terminations. If you type that into your browser, then you will come to, let me just change this a little bit here so you can see exactly what you do come to. It will load up and look like this. And down here is the sequencer. And this is the part of the program, the functionality that we want to get to. So we click on that, and that's how we get to this screen. This screen has a settings button down below and an abbreviations button, and also some instructions on the right-hand side. But if I click abbreviations, for instance, all my abbreviations for calls will show up over here. And these abbreviations, you can modify them. You can put in any kind of abbreviation you want. You can actually substitute the entire list by, well, there's a way to do it. You create your own text file, you clear out this one, pump in your own text file, and you have all your own abbreviations for all the different calls. Now, there's another button down here called settings. And what I want to do right now is I want to do 2 things. I want to go to facing couples. So now I have a 2 couple situation. And I also want to get rid of couple numbers. This is what newer callers should set up in terminations in order to, well, to really to get yourself involved in learning what is a primary skill before you go on to learning relationships, sequence, or anything else. You must be able to control these 4 dancers. It's an absolute must. And how do you do that? Well, you set this up, you go over here and you start calling calls. And you make them simple. Pass the ocean, recycle. You could say sweep a quarter. I'm just going to say veer left and bend the line because sweep the quarter had to be appended after the recycle on the same line. And now they're back home again. Okay, these are the drills that you want to do. This is a little 4-call module that brought the dancers back home. You do a reset on that and you give them another module. And the idea is this: you want to be able to take these dancers and put them wherever you want. So how many different phasers can these dancers exist in? Well, let's see. There's 2 possible pairing situations. If I call a ladies chain, for instance, there's the other pairing situation. So I have 2 pairing situations, and then I really only have the horizontal versus the vertical as far as the location of the couples. So there's 8 phasers that these dancers can be in, and that's it. With 2 couples, there's only 4 phasers they can be in. So here I'm going to do a veer left and a bend the line. And this is another place where they can be. And your object is you need to say ahead of time where I want those dancers to be. It's not just bringing them home. It's being able to position them in this box of 4 any which way you want, and to describe ahead of time. Hang on a second. Thought I saw a flag. Anyway, to be able to decide ahead of time where you want to put them. So right now I want to bring them home. So what am I going to do? I'm going to do star through. Whoops, I got to get my cursor over there. Make it slide through. And then I'll do a pass through. And I'll do a partner trade.
Yep.
Yep, whatever it is. Is that it there? Last case, you can just type it all out. And there they are, they're back home again.
Yep. Comment.
Okay. So if I want to say lead right, that's a particular phaser. I mean, that's a place I want them to be. I might want them to be there because I might have a classic get out from there. All right. If I do, let me just check my abbreviations here for that partner trade. This is beginning to drive me crazy. And I've got all kinds of people in the way here too. Partner trade, where is it? Partner trade. Huh, not there. That's interesting. Anyway, partner trade. Right and left through. Now, swing through. Boom. You know, if I had a full square there, that'd be a great place for right, left, grand. So what was the setup? The setup would have been from this home position, lead right, swing through right and left grand. If I had a full square, that would be it. But here, I just need to be able to control these 4 dancers. This is so important, all right? Now, here's your final exam. Well, I'm going to give you a midterm exam. Your midterm exam is to get somebody to sit behind the computer, type in the calls while you call them. You turn your back to the computer and you start calling calls. And when you think they're home, you just say they're home. And then the person behind the computer tells you whether you're right or wrong. If you can do this 4 out of 5 times without a mistake, well, there'll be 1 mistake, 4 out of 5 times, then you get an 80% passing grade on your midterm. For a final exam, you got to get 8 out of 10. All right, 8 out of 10 times. And if you were in a caller school, a brick and mortar caller school, and I had you in front of me as newer callers right now, this is exactly what I would have you do. I would put 2 couples up, I would have you turn around, and I would have you call. And if you could successfully bring those couples back home 4 out of 5 times, great. And the best is be able to do it 8 out of 10 times. In other words, you need to follow the flow of these dancers in your head. Until you've developed that skill, everything else that we're going to be talking about is not going to make much sense. You need to have this skill. So right now, let's go back to a full square.
Yep. Can I just interrupt you for a second?
Sure, go ahead.
I just put in the chat that for some of the new callers, don't feel like you need to be afraid to ask a question. Kip has made it very clear, ask a question when it happens. A couple of questions come up already that you've answered. The one that I'm going to let you answer says, is what you're doing two-couple dancing, is that the same as burnt image type calling to when you start sight calling?
It is, in a sense, if you're bringing the dancers back home all the time. But if I want to target some other, one of those other phases with the four dances in them, then it's a form of isolated sight calling. Burnt image is basically you're going to take that number one man, number one lady, and bring them back to the same spot. You're just going to pick two dances and bring them back to the same spot. Isolated sight means that I'm going to maneuver these four dances into whatever phaser I want. So if I want to have them paired up over here in this quadrant, so that number one couple is on the east, number three couples over here on the west, I'm going to call something like this. Get my cursor over there. Swing through. Boys run. Bend the line. So using isolated sight technique, I have taken these dances and put them where I wanted to. Okay? Burnt image requires that I return them to where they were. Isolated sight, I'm going to put them where I want them. Does that answer the question?
I'll take that as a yes.
Okay, we'll say yes. Let me go back to the full square just for a second and show you that one thing that I like to do when I set up terminations, I put a color, any color I want. Over here, you can choose your colors. This is the number one couple. I can make them magenta. I can make them cyan. I just chose yellow. And over here, I picked the side couples, the number four couple rather, and I made them red. And I chose to make number two and number three black in color. And the reason I did that is because when I pick my four key dancers, I'm going to pick four adjacent dancers. And for me, I'm going to pick number four couple and number one couple, where number one man is my focal man. He's what I like to call the pivot. Now, there are several names for this individual. He's called the primary man sometimes. He's called the key man. I like to call him my pivot man or my focal man. And the reason he's my focal man is because I'm going to target this particular dancer all the time. I'm going to look for where he is, and I'm going to make determinations on my pairing states based on where that man is and who he's adjacent to or who he's looking at. So therefore, he is my focal man. Now, for the lady callers, you might want to choose couple number one and couple number two. So therefore, you would take couple number two, for instance, and you might want to make them red and make number four black. So your key dancers would be like this. Your pivot or your focal dancer would be the number one lady. And she's bookended on the left by her corner and by her partner, and on her right by her corner. So she stands between her partner and her corner, and this also helps in determining the sequence of the situation. Okay, so let's go back to having my number two couple black and my number four couple red. And now I'm going to actually take the couple numbers out. And now, as I do calls, I'm going to be able to see right away if there's a color to the dancers, they are my focal dancers. If there's no color to them, I don't know anything about them. I don't know what man this is. It could be number two or it could be number three. I don't know what lady this is. It could be number two or it could be number three. But the idea is I'm going to make determinations on pairings by simply looking at my key dancers and who's beside them at a particular time. So that's one of my objectives. Okay. At this point, I'm going to switch things over to normal lines. I'm going to call in a sequence for you that I have set up over here. You probably can't see what I'm doing, but I've called up my text editor and I'm copying a text string and I'm going to click on paste. This is the only way that you can get a series of calls into that left-hand panel. And there it is. And I missed a letter, so I'll put that in there. I'll say okay. And those calls are now over here in the left-hand panel. Okay? This is a set of calls where I'm going to step you through every possible pairing situation that can exist in a normally arranged facing line situation. These are going to be all of them, okay? So we're going to start out in a situation that clearly we have partners who are paired. Every situation, all common dancers are paired, okay? Also note that the only other state that the square can be in is to have these two ladies across from each other, a mixed paired state. So it's either a same paired state or a mixed paired state. There's a way for me to do something here. I want to see if I can do it. Hang on, bear with me, annotate, draw, where? This area right here is my area of focus, okay? Why? There's my focal man. Remember I said, I'm always going to locate him. I'm going to see or watch how he interacts with three other dancers, the one that he's paired with and the ones in this case that he's facing. It just so happens that most callers will have a tendency to watch the facing couples because they're interacting with each other. I mean, they could also watch the ones in the same line if they wanted to, but there's no interaction going on in the same line. Most of the interaction is going to be with the facing dancers. So therefore, this is what I'm going to look at. Now, as I step through the calls in this series of calls, I'll be defining for you the state of the square as we go along. The state of the square regarding relationship right now is same. All common dancers are paired. Everybody has partners. In group speak, this would be called a partner group. My first call is a ladies chain. So I execute the ladies chain. And what I have here is a mixed paired state. It's gone from same to mixed. Every time there's a chaining action in the square will always toggle or switch between same, then mixed, then same, then mixed, all the time, every time. So now we have a mixed paired state in the square. However, notice that the four dancers inside my box here are all the same. So the membership of this particular cluster or collection of dancers is the same. The membership hasn't changed. They simply changed pairings. So this group remains the same. It's still a partner group because the members of the group are all the same. The only way the group will change is if one of the members leaves the group and goes over to the other group. Or we could have two of the members leave and go over to the other group as well. But for now, for this exercise, we're only going to have one dancer leave. It's going to be the N lady. The N ladies are going to chain with each other. And as this dancer leaves this collection and arrives at the new one, this dancer over here will arrive in my box. And this will automatically change not only the group, but it'll change the common dancers. How do I know what the common dancers are? Well, since this guy down here is not changing when the N ladies chain diagonally, whoever he has for a partner will be the common dancers when the change is finished. So here we go. N ladies chain diagonally. And when this is completed, I'm going to tell you that all dances now are common, but they're not partners anymore. They're going to be corners. How can I prove this? Put the couple numbers in. Now I can see number one man has his corner. Number four man has his corner. All men have their corners. Common dancers are paired. It must be, therefore, a same pairing state. All common dancers are paired. We have a same pairing state. So moving along now, I'll take my numbers out and we'll say two ladies chain across. I have to go from a same paired state to a mixed paired state because that toggles. So the mixed paired state is corners are across from each other. Corners were paired, now corners are across from each other. Take a look at the situation that we have here and take a look at the visual. We see that we have one dancer paired with original partners, the other one is unpaired. So this is one of those visual states that I'm going to go back and review for you. And it's one that callers see all the time. The master callers always know when we have a couple paired and one unpaired, because this relates directly to what the pairing state is. In this particular case, it's corners. How do we know it's corners? If two corners exist in this same collection, then it's a corner group. You'll find out later that we can have a similar situation where corner is not in there, and that will be a right-hand lady situation. But right now, let's continue with the chaining action, because all we're doing is repeating the same pattern. Now, since this dancer down here, my focal dancer, must have his opposite lady, and I'm going to do a lady's chain diagonally, what do you suppose I'm going to end up with? Well, this is a mixed paired state. I have to end up with the same paired state. This man must have the same pairing as this man when I complete that chain. And we'll see that when we do that, in fact, common dancers are once again paired. Whoop, 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 slow down, guys, slow down. Go back. Whew, got carried away. This is an opposite paired situation, opposite lady group. All men are paired with opposite ladies. I'll put the numbers in just to verify that. Okay? So even though I had these dances blacked out, I knew this was an opposite lady situation. And there are certain visual things, triggers that told me that. Number one, I only have two key dancers in this collection. Anytime there's only two key dancers in the collection, whether they be a boy or a girl key dancer or the two boy key dancers, it makes no difference. Over here, you got the two girl key dancers. When you only have two keys, you've got to be dealing with opposite ladies. All right? Has to be. And this is the same pairing state. So I'm going to switch this to a mixed pairing state. And you'll see at this point, nothing. There's nothing that tells you. This, by the way, is the toughest one to observe. I don't know if these guys have their original opposite ladies beside them, or if this man has his corner and this man has his right-hand lady. What I do know is this man will either have his corner or his right-hand lady. And since his corner is over here, this has got to be his right-hand lady. This man can only have his corner or his right-hand lady. Well, since his right-hand lady is over here, this must be his corner. It must be. There's no other choice. I'll put the numbers in so we can see. And sure enough, this man has his right-hand lady. This man has his corner. Okay? They're all facing their opposite lady. So the primary rule is still in play. The primary rule says dancers will either be paired with the common dancers or across from the common dancers. Opposites are across from each other in this case. So continuing on, I do another end ladies chain, and this we know has to be a change in the group. It has to result in a change in the common dancers. This man had with him his right-hand lady. So this man must also have his right-hand lady, because when the chain occurs, it goes from mixed to same every time. It toggles back and forth. Since this man had his right-hand lady here, this man has to end up with his right-hand lady. This has got to be a right-hand lady group. And how do we see that visually? Well, we see one couple potentially paired, one couple potentially unpaired, and corner is not in the collection. My focal man's corner is over here. And when I see that, I know this is right-hand lady. This is a right-hand lady situation. Okay? And if I continue along by chaining the girls across, I see it even more clearly. because now I have that line that has one paired and one unpaired, but corner is not in this collection. Corner is actually over here for my focal man. So therefore, this has to be a right-hand lady situation. Okay, and then let's just continue with this, and we'll say end ladies chain diagonally. This has to bring us back right where we started from, which is all paired with partners. So that's it. That's it. That is the total summation of all the possible pairings you can have in facing lines, normally arranged facing lines. And that's it. And the perspective here is there's a visual way to figure it out and there's a mathematical way to figure it out. If you don't like math, you got to learn the visuals. And that's where we're going to go next. Okay. Let me share my screen again. Go back to here. And we have three cases, the three visual cases. These are critical. All right. I think that friend Daryl Clendenin was with us at the last session. And he tried to articulate this. He said, there's only three places to look. There's only three things to look for. That's one thing that's marvelous about us old fossils. We've developed ways and techniques of seeing these things. And we just see them. And we can't understand how people don't see them. But at any rate, for the newer caller, it's difficult when you first try to learn these things. So what these two methods have in common is they're based on the principal pairing rule and the concept of common dancers. Okay, so we're going to see that as we move along. The first visual case is, and we have to kind of clarify our terms. Now, when we talk about paired, we mean boys are with original partners. When we say couples are paired, we mean all boys and girls are original partners with each other and standing beside each other. When we say unpaired, we mean that the boys are standing beside their original opposite lady. Ladies are standing beside their original opposite men. So paired and unpaired. The all paired situation must mean all men are with original partners. When we view two couples, the same pairing state is all paired with partners. So what's the mixed pairing state? Because that's the only other one that can possibly exist. And the mixed pairing state is one man will have his corner and the other man have his right-hand lady. So whenever we have all partners together, the only other state that can exist is if these two ladies chained, in which case this man would be looking at his partner, this man would be looking at his partner, but my focal man would be paired with his corner, and my other key man would be paired with his right-hand lady. So the mixed paired state is always corners and right-hand ladies whenever you deal in partner lines. Whenever you deal in partner boxes, it's the same darn thing. If I did a two ladies chain here, my number one man focal man receives his right-hand lady, number two man receives his corner. So that state is always the same. The thing about this is, from a visual standpoint, it's the easiest one to see, because what are we looking for? We're looking for all men to be paired. So here we have the paired states looking at each other. That's easy to see. Over here, it might be a little bit more difficult because we have to kind of glance back to where the number four man is and see that he's paired too. But this is the same pairing state. And by the way, this particular phaser is where you would be, as you said, like heads lead right. If the heads lead right, this is what you have. So the all paired situation is pretty easy to see. The second state is the state where we have one paired and one unpaired. Now I can prove to you, it's kind of boring really, but I can prove to you mathematically this particular state occurs 67% of the time when you're calling. But I won't go into that. All I'm saying is you really need to know this one. The one paired, one unpaired state is one of the most common states that they're going to be in. When the same pairing state is all paired with corners or all paired with right-hand ladies, and there's only one possible original partner pairing visible, that's what you have. So down here, we see, let me go back again and kind of block that out. We see that we have one couple paired, one couple unpaired. And again, I went immediately to my focal man and said, what's with this guy? Who's he looking at? What's going on? And I see that he's looking at a paired couple. If you put these people into a line, the line might look like this. And again, I'm looking at my focal man and I look straight across. I see nothing over here. I don't recognize these dancers. I don't know who they are. So I glance down the line and there they are. There's that paired couple. There's the unpaired couple. Okay. This is often called, and callers have a way of doing this all the time. They'll take a particular phaser that is very familiar to them. Like this one is a very familiar phaser to most master callers. When we see this, we call it a Dixie Grand line. And we call it a Dixie Grand line because it not only describes where the dancers are, but the name Dixie Grand comes from the fact that if we call pass through wheel and deal, we can resolve from there with a Dixie Grand to an Alaman left. I'll leave you and your checkers to figure that one out. This is in your slide set that you've gotten in the PDF file. So you can go back and set that up with your checkers and see that a pass through wheel and deal Dixie Grand is going to resolve the square. And that's why many callers refer this to a Dixie Grand line. And if these couples right here were to do a right and left through, they'd still call it a Dixie Grand line, except they'd have to, the resolution would then have to be pass through wheel and deal, zoom to a Dixie Grand, because you have a sequence change that has to be accounted for. All right. Mel, I see a lot of flashing going on. You got any questions that need answering?
No, I was just reloading the, the PDF document that you sent as an attachment in there when you referred to it. The questions that came up were on your principal pairing room when you talked about relative lady, but you answered that. The question was, does relative lady mean partner? But you answered that with the subsequent slide, meaning no, relative being relative to who the other dancers in the square. A general comment on your bravery by calling women common all the time. And you've answered all the other ones already.
I said common dancers. That includes men.
Yep.
I thought I would save that one for the end, but it was a classic.
That is a good one. Okay.
And the other one was when you say same, all have original partners or all have the same different lady. When you said same pairing, same in that relative meaning means they all have the same person, but it could be a different, it could be a corner, it could be a partner, it could be an opposite when they're all the same.
That's correct. Yes, yes, it is. And that's what the word common dancers mean. It's a simple term that simply means that all men are paired with the same relative girl. They all have corners, they all have right-hand ladies, they all have opposites, they all have partners. When you say common dancers are together, that's what you mean.
Yep.
Okay.
I've been flipping back and forth between screens, which is probably why you're getting a flashing, because not everybody fits on one screen. So I flipped back and forth just to make sure that nobody's got a flag raised that was missed.
Okay, well, it's always good for me to double check with you from time to time.
Yep.
So that we have, it's very important that we all move along together on this, so we understand that what I really did so far, especially with all that action in terminations, was to prove the principal pairing rule. And that rule, simply stated, is all common dances will be paired or across from each other at any given time. At any given time. And if you can really get your mind wrapped around that, let me put it this way. We go to a brick and mortar college school, and we start out the first day or two with things that need to be covered. You talk about taxes, you talk about club management, you talk about presentation, you talk about all kinds of things. Eventually you get a chance to call. Hopefully it's within the first 2 days. And what you really went to the college school for was to call. So now you're doing it, you're calling. And what are they doing? They're having you go from formation to formation. They sometimes will hold up flashcards and they'll say, all right, now go to right-hand ocean waves. Okay, now go to facing lines. Now go to right-hand columns, and so on. And then they bring in the arrangement idea. And they say, okay, now go to right-hand ocean waves with men on the ends. Now go to right-hand ocean waves with girls on the ends. and that type of thing. So now they cover arrangements. What's the very next thing that they do? Drives me to distraction. They start with site calling. And they say, okay, now you got to get one paired, one unpaired. They give the algorithm, get the unpaired couple in the center, look for the corner. If the corner's behind them, square through 3. If the corner's in front of them, pass through. And this, to me, is the rabbit hole that newer callers head down that really gets them into trouble. Why? Because they don't understand relationships. They don't know how to get one couple paired or one couple unpaired because they don't know where the dances are at. But if you understand the principal pairing rule, you have to ask yourself, as a really good site caller, why do you need a site resolution algorithm? At any given moment in time, your pairing is either in front of you or across from you. And a good site caller should know right away, without going through any algorithm, whether a two ladies chain is going to pair him with corners, or whether he already has corners in front of him, or whether he already has right-hand ladies paired in front of him, or whether he already has opposites. A really good site caller knows this. Bob Elling knows this. He knows this, but he doesn't know it by these technical terms. These technical terms drive Bob Elling crazy. He just has these visuals in his head, and I'll show you some of these visuals that cause him to know what the pairing state is. And you only gain that through years and years and years of experience, a long time. But if you have a path of learning how to get there, you cannot skip relationship. Relationship is an important step before you finally reach the point where you have total control and you can call yourself a master site caller. All right. So I'm not downing site calling. I'm just saying it comes way too early into callers training, way too early. It's important. I've already shown you that you need site calling in order to do two couple calling. So site calling is important, but it needs to be learned as you go along and not as a separate goal. So now the final situation is the toughest one for callers to see, visually or otherwise. Now, we do have a couple of visualizations to help with this, but the final situation, the third method of the third visual, if you will, is what we call the unpaired situation. And that means you locate your focal man and you cannot see a pairing. There is no pairing at all. We see when the original partners are not contained in the two couple view, if you cannot find a single pairing in a two couple view, then you're dealing with opposite ladies. Either all men have opposite ladies or they're across from opposite ladies. And so here we're going to take a look at each situation one at a time. And down here, let me see if I can get my, so many fancy things here. Ooh, laser. So here we have one situation where we see that we have two key dancers that we recognize. And by the way, you may remember that I told you a little bit earlier, whenever you're dealing with opposite ladies, there's only two key dancers in any collection of 4 dancers, only 2. Look over here to the right collection, there's only 2 key dancers. Look along the lines, there's only 2 key dancers. Okay, so that's important. That's the first visual that callers will pick up on is, number one, there's no partner pairings. These 2 girls do not pair with either of these 2 men as original partners. And so therefore, that tells me right away, I'm in an opposite lady situation. And I happen to be looking at my opposite ladies from here. Okay. Now, if I did a slide through from where I was, I would end up in something like this. Actually, this is the answer to slide through plus a 180-degree rotation. I should have fixed that before I put it in there, but there it is anyway. If I did a slide through from here and then rotated the entire square 180 degrees, this would be what I would have. So all men are now paired with opposite ladies. So common dances are paired. Common dances are paired at this point. Still, no original partner pairing can be seen. What we can see is that partners are diagonally opposite each other and they are as far away from each other as they can get. And that's like Ed Foote. Ed Foote says, hey, whenever I see that that partner is as far away as she can be, I know I got opposite lady. That's his visual. This is a visual that maybe Bob uses as visual too. I'm not sure, but he'll tell us if he does. So the only other situation that can occur with the opposite ladies, if we chain these two ladies so that we are now facing opposite ladies, we'll have a mixed pairing situation. Let's see if that's the next one I did. No, actually what I did here is I did a bend the line. So because I wanted to show you once again that even if you bend the line, you're not facing any partners, okay? But now I'm going to chain the two girls. And when I finish the chain of the two girls, now I have an interesting visual. And here you'll see that partners are actually in the same line, but they're once removed or twice removed from each other. Some of your more master callers have a phrase that describes this setup, because this is a common setup when you're dealing with opposite lady. And the expression is, I got his and he got mine. I see my partner in the line, but the other guy has her. I've got his, he's got mine. Same thing over here. I've got his, he's got mine. So the I got his and he's got mine line tells you you're dealing with opposite ladies. Okay? So now we know how we can identify the most difficult visual that there is, and that's the opposite lady situation. And it is difficult because there's only two key dancers that are available. And it could be a man and a woman that we see as key dancers, or what's even more difficult, the two men. And we have the two key men, and we don't know these girls at all. 2 and 3, that's why they're black. We don't know who the heck they are. How can we tell who we're looking at? How can we tell who we're paired with? And we do that by recognizing that our partners are diagonally opposite each other. In this case, we have the I've got hers and he's got mine. Or I've got his and he's got mine. Those two visuals. Okay, moving right along. I'm not going to go into the groups method. That's another whole topic, okay? I'm going to skip through this rapidly. You can look at these slides. They're all there for you. Talk about group membership, how it changes. And we talk about the terms that describe the dynamics of groups. What I want to get to is the invert and rotate module. The invert and rotate module. Now, this is where you're going to use something right away. This is a fantastic explanation of technical zeros, I think, in my own humble opinion. Let me get my pointer back here. All right, so we're going to start it from a normal 8 chain through. The invert and rotate module is a frozen module. In other words, it's a select series of calls in a particular order. And it's always going to start from a normally arranged 8 chain through box setup with all common dancers facing. This is important. All common dancers must be facing. The module is star through, pass through, bend the line, and slide through. I like to use slide through as my last call instead of star through, because slide through gives me the opportunity upon its completion to use any hand or either hand in the next call executed. Where star through, there's a lot of controversy about star through and the handedness of the calls that follow it. And if you stop and think about it, there aren't very many calls you can do after a star through without breaking the handedness rule. The handedness rule is the rule that says hands should alternate. If you just got done using your right hand, you should use your left hand next. That's the handedness rule. But star through is a tough one. You can do star through, pass through, no problem. But even star through, right and left through, causes the girl to switch her hand, causes the boy to switch his hand. And so it's difficult. So I like to use slide through instead. It's the same darn thing, because we are starting from normal arrangements. So the slide through will work just as fine. Start through, pass through, bend the line, and slide through. Remember that 4 call module. Now, the thing about the invert and rotate is it can start in any sequence, either sequence state, in or out. It makes no difference. It's still going to work. It is still going to give you the 0 that you want. Okay? Now, it can start from a corner box. And here, remember, it says all common dances must be facing. So in a corner box, you have common dances facing. They're all facing corners. It can be a corner box, or it can be a CBO, which is a corner box out of sequence. Just have these couples do a right and left through, and you have a CBO. So from either one, you can execute the invert and rotate module, and it's going to work. It'll work from a right-hand lady box because all dances are facing right-hand ladies. And that's the rule. The rule says as long as common dances are facing in the normally arranged box, you can get away with an invert and rotate, and you're going to be able to 0 things out. So over here is your partner box. This one happens to be a PBO. If you do a star through or a slide through from a facing line, the PL line, you end up in a PBO, which is a partner box out of sequence. Everybody's facing common dancers. They're facing original partners this time. That's what's common between them. And of course, the last one would be the opposite lady box, where all dancers are facing opposite ladies. From any one of these 4, or actually any one of the 8, if you conclude the fact that they can be done from either sequence, you can execute your star through, pass through, bend the line, slide through, and it's going to be a 0. Okay? Now, this little table that I have, I'm just going to reference this just briefly and let you know that it's in the slide set. If you ever go to a brick and mortar college school, take this with you. All right. These are the more common. There's a partner line and there's a partner line out of sequence. There's a partner box out of sequence. So what you have in the partner situation, you have lines, you have boxes, 8 chain through boxes, and you have a get out, the simplest get out that's commonly used from each one of them. All right. That's the get outs. Now I've got to switch over to examinations one more time. Let me do a reset here. Let me start from a squared up set. Let me put my numbers back in. Put my abbreviations over on the side. And I'm going to do a heads pair off. Heads square through 4 or heads pair off. Either one gets you to the same place. This is corner box right here. And the module is star through. Huh. What happened to my abbreviation? Pass through, bend the line, and slide through. And this is a corner box. Okay? So I've gone from one corner box to another corner box. It is, in essence, a 0. This particular phaser is almost identical to the corner box I started in. What does that mean? I said heads pair off. And I ended up in a corner box that had the sides paired outside and the heads unpaired inside. Okay? But I ended up in a corner box that had the heads paired outside, the sides unpaired inside, and of course everything was rotated 180 degrees. So there seems to be 2 iterations of the corner box. And in fact, there is. They're different because of the roles and the positions that the heads and the sides are in. The roles and the positions. Now I'm going to make another statement to you. Every single phaser has an equivalent setup. This is the equivalent setup of having the heads go to the center and pair off. Here, the sides went to the center and pair off. These two setups are technically equivalent to each other. So what is it that a invert and rotate module does? Invert and rotate module is a technical zero because it moves dancers from one known phasor to the technically equivalent phasor. And you can do that with any phasor. I don't care what it is. Every single phasor has a technical equivalent. And you can develop, it won't be this module of calls, but you can develop a module of calls that will move dancers from wherever they are to the technically equivalent setup. The invert and rotate happens to be a very powerful one. It's powerful for new callers to own this one. This one, I want you to practice with as much as you can. And the reason is because as you execute this particular module, it gives the dancers a chance to feel like they're dancing with all the dancers in the square and they're moving along to different locations as they're doing it. They don't know what's going on, but they're really back in the same place. So remember how we started this whole discussion today. Wouldn't it be great if we could just call one zero to another and have everything just sort of work out? And the answer to that is yes, it would be. And yes, we can. Now, what is the secret behind the technical zero? The secret is that the common dancers move together. So I'm going to do the star through from here. And that's going to pair up common dancers. Do we all see that focal man has his corner and the other key man also has his corner? All corners are paired. As long as I keep this pairing together, I can literally move these dancers anywhere I want, and they'll always be in a corner group. All right, watch. Pass through. Wheel and deal. Whoops. Help me, help me, help me. Wheel. Now this is driving me crazy. It's almost like my,
If it's not,
You
playing,
like
I just
three.
type it out.
yeah, it's almost like my abbreviations disappeared. Wheel and deal. All right, double pass through. Okay, leaders trade. Now remember, my focal man, number one, and his corner, they're traveling together. They really haven't parted company. Swing through. Boys run. Have you noticed? My focal man is still with that corner girl. Couples circulate. Bend the line. And now I say, okay, I've danced him around enough. I want to get him out. I know that the corner box has one very distinct visual aspect, and that's the paired couple is always on the outside. So I see that I'm not going to be able to get that right away unless I did the right and left through first. As soon as I do that, I can pair my outside couple. I know the inside couple is going to be unpaired. I'm back to corner again. So whatever I just typed here became an enormous technical zero. All right. I'm going to show you something else interesting about the technical zero. As soon as I figure out what my abbreviation is for star through. Oh, I didn't write that. Somebody else wrote that. I do have a different list up. So star through. I have paired up once again my focal man and his corner lady. And I just learned that as long as I keep these dancers together, wherever I take them, I'll be able to reestablish that corner box very easily. Okay. Now, as I look, I see that, let me do a right and left through here first, okay? So that I know that if I did a slide through, I'd be back in the corner box. Now, here I see that my focal man and his corner is playing with this couple in front of him. What's the only other two dancers he can play with and still maintain the line formations? Now, it's true I can probably get these two in the center and have them play with each other, but that's not what I mean. What I mean is to have all the dancers interacting, The only other two dancers that he can play with are down here, these two. And what makes a technical zero is that I can move the dancers from playing with these two to playing with these two. And when I do that, I have completed a technical zero effect. And the easiest way to see that is pass through and bend the line. Now, my focal man is in fact playing with those other two dancers. A minute ago, he was facing these two. He was playing with these guys. Now he's over here playing with these guys. And I can see that all I have to do is get this paired couple on the outside, and I can go back to a corner box. Okay? However, suppose I didn't do that. Suppose I wasn't aware that these were the other two. Suppose I'm just marching along merrily on my way, and I just happen to come back to the same two. And now I'm going to get this paired couple on the outside, the other couple on the inside. What have I done? I've done a zero, a true zero. So Kip, are you telling me that it's either going to be a technical zero or a true zero, and I don't have to worry about it? Bingo, that's it. It's always going to be one or the other. So if I do a star through, there I've paired them up, pass through, bend the line, and I do a slide through from here, there's the technical zero. But if I undo that last slide through, and instead I say pass through, bend the line again, right and left through, I need that for the sequence in order to get the paired couple outside, and then slide through, that's a true zero. I just moved the dancers who once were over here to over here, but they're still all facing corners. And so I kind of want to conclude with that, because this is an aspect of technical zeros that never gets talked about. When you learn a technical zero like invert and rotate, you're actually learning to play with common dancers. You're learning to play with common dancers and to understand that they're either going to interact with the same exact dancers again, and if they do, you can reestablish a true zero phaser, or they'll be interacting with the other two. And if they interact with the other two and you reestablish the same phaser, it's a technical zero. Either way, it's going to be a zero. And so knowing this, you can literally go from 0 to 0 all the time. And I'm going to show you that as a last exercise. I have corners now, so I'm going to call past the ocean. And I know that my corners are paired. Okay, I'm going to do a conversion, and when I do this conversion, all the men are going to come back to a new lady and all common dances are going to be together. All right, ends. Am I in my box here? Okay, ends, circulate. And now I see that my common dances are together. In order to use my invert and rotate module, I need common dances facing from a box. In order to do that, I'm going to say centers trade. And then I'll say, whoops, recycle. Now I have common dances facing. And I say, oh, hey, I can invert and rotate. And I'll either end up with a technical zero or I'll end up with a true zero. A technical zero will find one man, my focal man and his corner, on the outside of the box. All right, the technically equivalent setup. If they come back to the inside of the box, I'm back in the same exact phaser. So here we go. Let's call, that's a dumb abbreviation. I'm changing that one. Pass through, bend the line. Notice I'm keeping my common dancers together. Pass the ocean. Recycle. Veer left. Centers trade. Wheel and deal. Common dancers are now facing. Okay. My get out is pass through, Alaman left. My get out from when I started was pass through, Alaman left. This is a 0. Okay. So let's just say step to a wave, ends circulate, and I'm back to corners again. Here we go. Centers trade. I'm going to set up common dancers facing. Recycle. Common dancers are facing. What's my get out from here? Raise your hand if you want to offer a get out from here. How about dive through, square through 3 hands? How about slide through twice? Hey, here's a good one. Swing through, recycle, pass through, right and left grand. All right. These are just get outs that we've got memorized from this particular phaser. That's all that is. But now I'm going to invert and rotate. So I do a star through, pass through, bend the line, and slide through. I should be able to do a dive through, square through 3, same get out. And I can see that, yes, I can do that from here. I'll let you guys complete that exercise if you want, but I know that this is a 0. It has to be a 0. Okay. Instead, I'm going to do right and left through, slide through, whoops. Pass through. I'm back into my module again. Bend the line. Because I called a right and left through, I've got to neutralize that right and left through. So here's another right and left through, and then I call my slide through, and there I am, right back in the same exact spot again. And so this would be like a true 0. All right, so there you have it. So using nothing but the invert and rotate module, you can use it anytime common dances are facing. When you run it to the other 2 that you're not facing, it'll be a technical 0 once you reestablish the phaser. If you run it back to the same 2 you're facing, it's going to be a true 0 once you reestablish the phaser. And so now you can go from 0 to 0 to 0. And in between these things, you can change your common dances if you want, like I did with the end circulate, going to partners, and then reviewing the whole exercise again. Just having control of this one feature of technical zeros, you can call an entire evening's dance with this. And believe me, this is worth your study. So that's my presentation. I'm going to stop it here. I probably went way over time. Sorry about that. My apologies. I hope that has all worked out. I hope we have at least 2 people with us.
Well, we had about 40. A few people dropped out, and they says they can't wait to see the rest of it on video, and they'll watch it again. There was only one question that come out, and I think you've just answered that, and that was on the invert and rotate. You keep calling that a 0. I think that was clarified that the 0 doesn't really matter what the phasor state is on that. And it was more along the line of, if I'm just trying to get this correct, invert and rotate plus 0 plus chicken plucker plus invert and rotate plus chicken plucker. Is that how you would put these all together?
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I could start in a corner box. I could do an invert and rotate and bring them to the technically equivalent corner box. I can do a right and left through, dive through, pass through, bring them over to right hand lady. They're all still facing common dancers. I can call another invert and rotate, slide through, pass through, bend the line, slide through. Know that that's a 0 back to right hand lady. and then bring them back across the street with a chicken plucker. Right and left through, dive through, pass through, Alaman left. And that's exactly right. That is a powerful feature of it. You invert and rotate the chicken plucker. And I happen to use conversions. I kind of like conversions because dancers don't see it coming. They sometimes will see a chicken plucker coming. But there are other ways to do a chicken plucker too, Mel, as you know, and it's kind of fun. Maybe if we did another session on groups, I'll go into that, where we have different ways of executing chicken pluckers out of groups that don't have anything to do with dive through, pass through.
That's one of the queries. Are you going to be coming back to go on the slides you skipped over? And that was group. So
it's up to you, Mel. You guys are in your summer down there, so you're probably having a lot of vacation time. Maybe after the holidays we can get together, and I'd be happy to.
well, consider it a booking. I'll be in touch with you.
All righty. Okay,
Right,
how about some newer
there
callers?
were-
I want to hear from a newer caller. Has
Yeah,
this
there
been
were-
worth your while?
There were no more other questions, so the floor is open. You got a chance here to pick Kip's brain, not often a chance, because I think people have been picking it through the whole COVID thing. So I don't know how much is left in there, but still more than all of us will have already forgotten.
Yeah, Kip, I watched this whole thing. It's pretty interesting, but I guess I just haven't developed a knack of how you can keep track of the dancers. You know, like it's great here on Taminations, they all got numbers on their back. It's a sweet deal, but how do you do that in real life? I just haven't quite nailed down how to look at a square and then just keep track of the dancers, know who's who in the zoo.
You know, John, I'm glad you asked that question, because almost all new callers suffer the same anxiety, if you will, you know, because as much as you practice with checkers, as much as you practice with something like Taminations, when you get those warm bodies in front of you, things seem to change. And all I can say is do the exercise as I pointed out. Start with 2 couples, take the numbers out, make the opposite couple black, and give a color to the near color that you're going to watch. All right. And start that way, because when you have live dancers in front of you, you don't have numbers on them, and they don't have nice colors like red and yellow and green and chartreuse and all that. What you have is you've got the corner man who happens to look like a modern day Santa Claus, and he's standing beside a very short lady who's not stout, and that surprises you because Santa's wife should be stout. So these things stick out in your mind, and you're able to glue them together as a pair. And then your number 1 couple behind you, you know, whose back is to you, you're going to know them, or you're going to see something about them that you recognize. But the whole object of picking key dancers isn't just to pick key dancers. It's to pick key dancers in such a fashion that you remember who they are. You've got to remember who they are, or none of this is going to work.
Well, that's where I'm at. None of this is going to work right now. It just takes, just take time to figure out how to break that, crack that nut.
Do it
John?
with Taminations, 2 couples, only 2 colors. Start there. Get 2 couples of friends over to your house. Push that kitchen table aside and call to them, John. Call to them just like you practice with Taminations.
One of the biggest things that was said a lot of the time is start your calling with 2 couples, start working with 2 couples. Even if it's in Tamination, start working with 2 couples. As far as remembering the colors, one suggestion that was given was start with the 2 couples with the colors, and then keep, if you're using number 1, keep them a solid color and change the individual dancers' colors. And then just start working your way through it to remember who's with where. So you've got 2 yellows and then a green and a blue, and you just start building that memory pattern. I always say whatever works best for you is right.
None of this stuff is easy. None of this stuff is easy. This is like a 6-year degree in college.
Yep.
One suggestion that I can make that is something that I learned to do is I bought this thing called a boogie board. It's kind of like a little Etch-a-Sketch. And I put an L shape on it and I write the people down, even if it's just, short, fat guy, whatever, just so that I know who I'm dealing with, because otherwise when you're calling, you do lose track of who's who.
That's a very good suggestion, Phil. And I'll tell you that some of the best callers I've worked with over the years would do that on a regular basis. Steve Cotman, and especially Lee Cotman. Lee Cotman hardly ever start a tip without writing down his 4 key dancers, the way he wants to memorize them. As a matter of fact, he had a notation system that I've yet to really totally comprehend, where he could do it for 3 squares. He would somehow make these notations, and that would tell him who the pairings were for 3 different squares. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, we're getting an awful lot of comments that all basically say the same thing here, Kip. Would love to have you back. Learned a lot. Please come back, come back, come back, come back. So I think you're definitely going to be coming back. It is now half an hour past the hour. I would like to personally add my general thanks and my generous thanks to Kip for coming in and actually tackling what is one of the most difficult targets and the most difficult topics, and that is the technical zero for what it is in its base form. We are more than happy to have you back. Kip is going to stick around for a few minutes to answer any questions you may have, but please, we're officially ending the formal part of the presentation. The floor is open for discussion for everybody. Thank you all for coming in. Don't feel obligated you have to stay, but you're more than welcome to. And thank you, everybody. And thank you very much, Kip.
Thank you. Thank you. Hey, Susie, you're looking great.
So if any of the new callers have any questions for Kip, now's the time to throw them out there.
Kip, this is Eric Tangman.
Hi, my friend. How you doing?
Alrighty. I'm back. I think it was about slide 3 or so when you were talking about visual 1. You, if I remember correctly, indicated that was difficult to figure out when you had only one couple, and actually it's quite obvious that it's a partner group.
Yeah, I don't think it was. It's possible, Eric, I misspoke. The all paired is the first visual, and that's the easiest one to recognize at any time.
Right, and if you have only one couple paired and only 2, you know, of your focal dancers in there, it has to be a partner group as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah, in other words, you could have couple number 1 facing couple number 2.
Yes.
Yeah, you could have couple number 1 facing couple number 2, but if you glance down the line, you'll see that there's 4 and they're paired as well.
Right.
Yeah, one thing is if you're trying to count key dancers, one thing just to note is whether you or not your partner is part of that focus group. If you only have 2 key dancers, if your partner is part of it, then it's not an opposite lady group, obviously.
Correct. Partner has to be missing. And the thing is, when you have a 1 paired, 1 unpaired situation, you look for the presence or the absence of the corner to determine whether it's a corner group or a right-hand lady group. And when you have a situation where it's either all paired or none paired, you're looking for the presence or the absence of the partner. If the partner is there, it's all paired. If the partner is nowhere in sight, then it's opposite lady. Bob Elling, stop scratching your head. You're trying to formulate a question. I can see it. It's written on your.
You make my mind spin. You know, you're right. You're way above my head all the time. But I'm happy with what I can do.
I'll tell you what. Happy holidays to you and Lois.
Thank you very much.
I think one of the comments that you made, Kip, near the beginning is you have a way of saying this and expressing this and seeing this. Bob Elling has another way, and he would say it completely different. And that's an important factor in actually understanding these. If you look at the groupings or if you look at the setups and how you want to do it and how the zeros or the technical zeros apply to your calling, how you express it to yourself and how you can make yourself understood to a dancer is what's important. And how Kip may say it, how I may say it, how Bob Elling may say it may be different. We're all saying the same thing. It's just like learning to call. Find the way that works for you, make it yours, and build from there.
By way of anecdote, For years, I've always tried to find a way to describe what it is that I knew about calling. And to me, if we can't communicate this to the up and coming callers, then that's a huge disservice that we're doing to the activity. We need to be able to communicate that. So in that quest, Bill Davis and I especially, for 3 years back in the 90s at Call Lab conventions, we had some of the master callers come into a room and call for us. And Bill and I would stop the caller and say, what is it that you see? What's going through your mind? What are you looking for? And it was amazing how many of those callers could not articulate what it was that they saw. And out of frustration, at one point, Tony Oxendine just looked at us and almost yelled. He said, I just see it. And that's the problem that the master callers have. And if you become a master caller on your own, just be aware of that you need to not only see it, but you need to find a way to tell somebody else what it is you see. It's just like finding a way to tell somebody how to tie their shoes.
Mhm.
It's very difficult.
Yeah.
Very
Terry
difficult.
Legg said the same thing.
Like explaining the color orange to a blind person.
And it's also the three blind men and the elephant too, because everybody's going to have a different way to express what it is that they see. Where I've been trying to find, and I realized early on that there was going to have to be an attempt made to develop a language, some terminology that we could all agree on, just so that we could understand the different things that we're talking about.
That's true, Kip. And it's only been, what, 60 years, and we're almost there to a point where we can agree on 20% of it.
Well, first of all, is getting it down on paper. This next thing is agreement. Agreement will always take longer.
So please,
Well, Kip,
Go ahead.
I'd like to thank you as a newbie caller, because I've always avoided the invert and rotate, because when I practice, I get myself into trouble with it. So now I know where to go and hopefully what I'm going to be doing. So I'll be using it more. So thank you.
So listen, Ross, that's great. And I encourage you to do so. Remember the common dancer. Keep the common dancers paired, and wherever you take them, it'll be a technical zero effect. Wherever they go, you'll be able to reestablish the original phaser all the time.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Yep.
Again, Kip, this is Eric. If I might interject, oftentimes you're saying technical zero when you really should say true zero. Invert and rotate is a technical zero regardless of the partner pairing, but its effect is, in one case, is a true zero, whereas in the other case, it's a half chicken plucker or a four ladies chain.
Yes, that's exactly true, Eric. And I know that you've been giving this a lot of thought yourself. The point is, where are you starting your observation from? Each time, if you're facing a common dancer in an 8-chain through box, and you call that invert and rotate, it's always going to take you to the technical equivalent setup from where you started. But if you call a second one after that, it's going to take you back where you started, because 2 technical zeros called in a row is a true zero.
Yeah. Even if they do moving a different point on floor.
Yeah, and that 90-degree rotation thing is coincidental to the calls. It has nothing to do with technical zeros.
For a question that comes up a lot of the times, I'm just going to put this, it didn't come up, but it came up a lot of the time when they were talking technical zeros. One of the terms that was used was, if I have a corner box, sides on the outside, an invert and rotate takes me to a corner box with the heads on the outside. It's just a different way of looking at it, but it's exactly the same thing as what's being said.
Yes.
And
Yes.
don't be afraid of them.
That's the inversion factor. When we talk about groups, you're going to see that one of the group dynamics is inversion.
Yeah.
And anytime that you transpose the roles and the positions of heads and sides, you can be in a technically equivalent situation.
Yes.
I wanted to mention something about the invert and rotate. There is a time when I do a star through at the end instead of a slide through, and it goes all the way back to beginners. I want to do a invert and rotate, in with a star through, dive through, square through 3. that catches the dancers, gives them different dancers doing the same thing and unexpected to be there to the corner.
That'd be a good case for using star through in place of the slide through. Again, it's using the SSD, which I'm teaching from now. I often teach slide through soon after star through. And so it's not a problem. But if you are teaching according to Hoyle right now, the existing Call Lab basic teaching order, you'll teach star through and it'll be quite a while before they have slide through. So you don't want to deprive yourself of the opportunity to use invert and rotate. Just put the star through in at the tail end instead of the slide through.
So what Bob is saying is a subtle difference, but in that choreographic case that he's talking about, it does make a difference. The hands are already connected, and then when they do the dive through, they stay connected, theoretically anyway.
I think it
There's
goes
so
a
much
lot
you
to
can
what,
do. There's so much you can do after the star through, circle to a line, pass through, trade by. You know, you do have a lot of variety using the star through.
I think a lot of that goes to what you said right at the beginning is your modules and your movements, you've got to treat them so that you know where you start, where you end, but more importantly, what you want to do next. And if you're using an invert and rotate module ending with a star through, you've already decided what you're going to follow that with before you use it.
Exactly.
If you were going to start with, if your next call was a square through or something like that, well, you would use a slide through course. But you've already predetermined that. And that's part of the learning to call. That's part of what Michael Hayworth was talking last week, is determining what you want to do next is just as important as understanding how these work. And that's part of the mechanics. There's a very good section on that actually, and there was a book I read one time called Nuts and Bolts, has a crazy author, but it talks a lot about that as well. Knowing what comes next. Product
That's
placement.
something too, Kip. I'll have to reread your book. I got halfway through and thought it was getting over my head. So I have to go back to the beginning now that I've got more understanding and read it again.
It's a good resource, Roz. You'll probably throw it back on the shelf 2 or 3 times and refer to it often in your career.
Well, what I found good about it was explaining why things happened. Rather than just do this, why does it do it? So I enjoyed that in the book. So I have to reread it. Thank you, Kip.
I'm
certainly welcome.
not marketing anything here, but Kip runs an online caller school at www.kipgarvey.com. You can contact him there. Also, you can email Kip for copies of either one of his books. For new callers, I really strongly recommend you get I Must Be Crazy. Sorry, that's not what it's called.
Call Me Crazy.
Call Me Crazy. I Must Be Crazy. Call Me Crazy or Nuts and Bolts. Read Call Me Crazy first. It gives you a good insight as to how to start thinking about what it is you're going to be doing as a new caller. And get a hold of Kip. He's very approachable. Kip, I want to say personally, thank you very much. About 4 years ago, I started putting new caller development puzzles and things like that online. And it was received by many, but it wasn't until guys like yourself and Tony and so many others, Wade Driver and whatnot, started chipping in. And suddenly these are the names of the legends, as they're called, and you do fit into that category. It wasn't until you started putting down a solution and putting things out as an experienced caller and saying this is good for everybody regardless how long, that we really got the uptake and it started. So thank you very much for that. Thank you for all that you've given me personally over the years, although we only really got to chatting in the last 4 years or so. And then only briefly, and thank you very much. And I definitely will be asking you to come back and talking about a few more things.
Sounds good. You guys enjoy your summer down there.
Will do. Now the
Yeah,
floor is
crazy.
open.
Crazy part of the
Hopefully
world
we'll
where the
have
what?
plenty.
Go ahead.
Hopefully we will have plenty of summer.
Yeah.
Hey, Barry, where's your hat?
Yeah, I didn't get one on this morning. I'm sorry about that. I'll make up for it next time.
Bad hair day.
I
Bad
was wondering
hair
the
day.
same thing.
It's just the Kaiser's new hat.
Yeah. Hey, Guido, thanks. It's good to see you. And I did pick up your message here. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, guys, Garvey from California, land of the fruits, nuts, and flakes. And
You take care, Kip.
yeah,
I
we're
thank you
out of
very
here.
much for coming in, And
Merry
good
Christmas, everybody. Merry
rest
Christmas.
of the day. Same to you.
Merry
All
Christmas,
the best
Kip.
for Christmas.
Thank you.
For those of you that
Thank
are
you.
interested in tuning in next week, we're just going to have an open forum discussion and look at some of the development of some of the modules or some of the development of some of the things that you want to look at as new callers or experienced callers. Get a little bit of work with terminations or things that you want to get analyzed. That was what was asked. So we're not going to have a formal presentation per se next week, but you're more than willing to come in and we'll see where it takes us. So I think that's it for today. If nobody has any questions, thank you very much all for coming on in.